Towns are like people. They have their own features, character, background and future. Speaking of Poltava, we always associate it with the famous battle Peter I won over the Swedish army of Charles XII in 1709. Over 2.5 centuries have passed since the famous battle. It was not an ordinary battle, but a struggle of nation for its future. Every year, tens of thousands of sightseers visit the Museum of the History of the Battle of Poltava to see the unique documents and relics reflecting this historic event, of which many monuments and memorable places around Poltava remind us today. The Monument of Glory. The monument was erected in 1805-1811 in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Poltava. 18 iron cannons taken from the Poltava battlefield are embedded in the foundation, which is reminiscent of a fortress bastion. The monument terminates in a figure of a gilt eagle with the laurel wreath in its beak and thunderbolts in its claws, which faces the grave of the Russian soldiers. On both sides of the polished granite pedestal are bronze, high-relief compositions of weapons, armor and banners. Between the bronze decorations, on the other two sides are curled-up snakes, a symbol of wisdom. The inscription in the circles reads, June 27, 1709, and completed in 1809. The pedestal is encircled by a pig iron fence. Large swords incorporated in the enclosure point downwards, a sign of rest after combat. The monument to defenders of the Poltava fortress and to the town commandant Alexei Kelin. Erected on the site of the most ferocious battle with the enemy who attempted to take the Poltava fortress by storm on June 21-22, 1709. The granite cube stands on the three-step base topped by an obelisk of pink granite. On the pedestal lies a scowling lion of bronze, and boulders of granite are placed on the other three sides. Over the lion is a bronze emblem of pre-revolutionary Poltava, and below a copper plate with the inscription, "To the valiant commandant of Poltava, Colonel Kalin, and the glorious defenders of the town in 1709. The monument was restored after World War II. The obelisk on the spot where the Russian troops crossed the river Vorskla in 1709. The granite obelisk was erected in 1957 in honor of the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Poltava. The bronze cartouche at the base bears the inscription, "The spot where the Russian army crossed over to the right bank of the river Vorskla by 3 fords on June 20, 1709. The monument to the Swedes from the Russian, built in 1909. The truncated pyramid made out of red granite is topped by a cross. On the eastern side of the pyramid is a bronze plate with the inscription, both in Russian and Swedish. eternal memory to the courageous Swedish soldiers who perished in the Battle of Poltava on June 27, 1709. The monument to the Swedes from the Swedes. Built in 1909, the monolithic granite monument was shipped from Sweden. The words "in memory of the Swedes who fell here in 1709", erected by their countrymen in 1909, are inscribed on both sides in Swedish and Russian. The monument on the spot where Peter I rested after the battle. Unveiled on June 27, 1849. The monument is erected on a pedestal with granite steps. A sword and shield with the helmet of the general lie on top of the obelisk. Overall height 8 meters. The words on the western side of the obelisk read, "Peter I rested here after the victories on June 27, 1709. Lower is the bas-relief of the emblem of the Russian Empire, and the relief of a resting lion is depicted on the base." The Museum of History of the Battle of Poltava. Inaugurated in 1950. Every year tens of thousands of sightseers visit the museum. The monument to Peter I in front of the Museum of the History of the Battle of Poltava. The bronze sculpture was made by sculptor A. Adamson in 1915. It was erected in 1949 on a small granite pedestal designed by architect D. Verotsky. The common grave of Russian soldiers. Built in 1894. 1,345 Russian soldiers were buried here on June 28, 1709. Church of the Saviour. The church was a part of the wooden Transfiguration Cathedral within the precincts of the Monastery of the Cross Exaltation. In 1705, the Cathedral of the Transfiguration was transferred to the Poltava fort. The best preserved part was named the Church of the Saviour. In 1845, a stone housing was constructed over the wooden church. The Rotunda of the Friendship of Nations, called otherwise the White Arbor. Built in 1909, in honor of the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Poltava, on the site of the Samson Tower of the Poltava fortress. The rotunda was destroyed by the German fascists and restored in 1954. The Monastery of the Cross Exaltation, founded in the 1650s by the Poltava Colonel Martin Pushkar and the Poltava Cossack chieftains. The construction of the monastery cathedral was completed in the second half of the 18th century. It is a unique monument of Ukrainian Baroque architecture. The height of its central part is 37 meters. The belfry of the Assumption Cathedral. The cathedral was the first cult structure of stone built in Poltava at Chervona Square. Its construction was completed in 1770. The belfry was built from 1774 to 1801. The building of the former fire brigade, built in 1810 in the style of Russian classicism. Colossus Movie Theatre, the former drama theatre, built in 1901. The auditorium has a seating capacity of 1,100. Many prominent Ukrainian actors performed on its stage. Burned by the German fascist invader, the building was reconstructed in 1961. The National Bank of Ukraine in Poltava region, built in 1912. The Regional Archive, built in 1901 for the Zemstvo Museum and Library. The building of the former Peasant Bank, built in 1909 in neo-Russian style. Nowadays it houses security services of Ukraine in Poltava region. The Children Arts Palace, built in 1914-1916 as a music school which trained musicians for the brass orchestra of the Russian army. The Local Law Museum. The building was constructed in 1903-1908 for the provincial Zemstvo. The facade is adorned with the emblems of chief towns of the Poltava province, which were adopted in 1782. The building was burned down by the fascist invaders and was restored after the war. The museum now has over 90,000 exhibits. Kotlarevsky Movie Theatre, former building of the Nobility Assembly, built in 1810, destroyed during the last war and restored in 1947. The City Council of Poltava, built in 1810, style Russian classicism. The central part is adorned by a 6-column Ionic porch with white steps. Side wings were added to the main building in the 1860s. In 2009, another building was added. The building of a former military school, built in 1841. Hero of the Soviet Union, Army General N. Vatutin, studied here in 1920-1922. The former Provincial House, built in 1810. The first Provincial Congress of the Soviets of Working People's Deputies opened here on April 30, 1917. This event is recorded on a memorial plaque. Nowadays, this is the House of the Trade Union. The Communication Building, built in 1957. Gogol Music and Drama Theatre, completed in 1958. The teacher's curtain was painted by artist G. Myasoyedov in the early years of this century. A bust of Nikolai Gogol stands in the entrance hall. The South Railway Station, completed in November 1947. The central entrance resembles a portal arch flanked by pylon with bronze bas-reliefs symbolizing the victory in 1709 and 1943. The Kiev railway station, built in 1901, restored in 1965. The facades incorporate elements of Russian classicism. There are many universities and colleges in Poltava. Korolenko Pedagogical University, opened in 1921 on the basis of the local Teachers' Institute, founded in 1914. The National Medical Stomatological Academy of Ukraine, built in 1967. Yaroslav the Wise National Law Academy of Ukraine, founded in 2002. Yuri Kondratyuk National Technical University of Ukraine, founded in 1930. Nikolai Lysenko Music College of Poltava, built in 1971. The local underground unit waged an active struggle against the enemy during the fascist occupation. A monument commemorating the valorous underground fighters was set up at the square on Kotlarevsky Street. Thousands of Poltavites were decorated with orders and medals of the Soviet Union for valor and courage, and over 200 were awarded the high title of the Hero of the Soviet Union. Poltava region gave the world many famous figures of science and culture. Bunin and Lunacharsky, Makarenko and Ostrogradsky, artist of the USSR Kozlovsky, surgeon Mykola Sklifosovsky worked in Poltava. On August 30, 1903, a monument to Ivan Kotlarevsky was ceremonially unveiled here. Famous Ukrainian writers and poets Kotyubinsky, Lesia Ukrainka, Vasilchenko, Stefanik, Staritsky, Sadovsky, Karpenko-Kary, Kropivnitsky and others arrived in Poltava on this occasion. The bronze bust of the poet is erected on a high granite pedestal. The lower part of the pedestal features scenes from his travesty Aeneid and plays soldier the Sorcerer and Natalka Poltavka. The words Ivan Kotlarevsky, 1769-1838, excerpts from Natalka Poltavka and the poem In Memory of Kotlarevsky by Taras Shevchenko are inscribed on the pedestal. The house of Ivan Kotlarevsky. The home where Ivan Kotlarevsky was born and lived has not been preserved. It was rebuilt after Taras Shevchenko's drawing, the picture by unknown artist, and blueprints of ancient Poltava. Bust of Ivan Kotlarevsky, erected in May 1971. The monument on the grave of Ivan Kotlarevsky, opened in 1898 on the 100th anniversary of the publication of Aeneid. Ivan Kotlarevsky Museum. The museum was opened in 1952. The house once belonged to V. Kapnist, Russian author and public figure. The monument to Nikolai Gogol, unveiled in 1936. Sculpture made in 1914. In 1959, The architectural form of the pedestal was improved, and a bronze plate with the inscription N.V. Gogol, 1809-1852 added. The monument to Taras Shevchenko, unveiled on March 12, 1926. The monument, made out of reinforced concrete symbolizing a burial mound upon which is placed the figure of the poet. The pyramidal pedestal bears the inscription T.H. Shevchenko and a line from his testament, and water with the tyrant's blood, the freedom you have gained. The House Museum of Panas Mirny. The author spent 49 years of his life in Poltava. The museum was opened in 1940. In 1951, a monument to Panas Mirny was erected near the museum. Korolenko Museum. The renowned Russian author and public figure Vladimir Korolenko lived in Poltava from 1900 to 1921. In 1928, the Korolenko Literary Memorial Museum was opened in the house where the author lived, worked, and died. The grave of Korolenko. The grave is situated in the picturesque corner of the Peremoga, Victory Park. In 1962, a monument was erected on the grave in the form of a granite boulder with a bronze bas-relief of the writer. Today's Poltava is rapidly expanding and acquiring a modern look which, combined with its famous historical landmarks, attracts an increasing number of visitors every year.